This is that time of year people are thinking about their relationships, and one of the most common questions we get asked is, Brendon, how do we set more boundaries in our relationships? You know, someone takes advantage of our time, our energy, our effort, our money, whatever it is, and we get upset about that. So how can we prevent that? Now, I'm going to speak today specifically about setting healthy boundaries in healthy relationships. Right? So your lover, your partner, your spouse, that person you're kissing on, how do you set some good relationship boundaries there? Okay, let's get into it. 4 big ideas. Number 1, most important, say it early. Don't wait to say it. What I mean by that is if you know what your boundaries are, don't let them crash into it and mess up before you say it. And what happens for most people, because they don't know their boundaries, they just flip off at somebody, right? Someone does something, they get all mad at them. They're like, what's wrong with you? And they don't realize the other person's clueless. No one will ever know your boundaries until you explicitly say, hey, this is a boundary for me. Let me say that again. No one will ever know it. Here's what happens, especially when people are new or young in a relationship, they try to set little hints. You know, someone does, their man does something, they're like, oh, honey, I wish you wouldn't do that. And they're like, that's all they say. That is not enough, okay? Men, by the way, are thick in the head. They need explicit, direct communication. If you set little hints or little traps, they're not gonna figure it out, ever. Not 5 years in the marriage, not 10 years. Boundaries need explicit communication. You need to say, hey, you know what? This is a real boundary for me. I'm not able to do that. I don't like that. This thing is really important to me. If you don't explicitly say it, they will never understand it or try to respect it. So if you got someone who's disrespecting you or not understanding you, is it because you haven't been explicit with them yet? At least start there. Trust me, start there. So maybe sit down and go, okay, think about the person you're in love with right now and say, okay, what are my real boundaries? What don't I want to talk about? What don't I like that they do? What do I not want to compromise again on? Where do I not want to feel like I'm too vulnerable? Or where do I want to open up? Like, you need to know your boundaries. And if you don't ever expect them to, and never get mad at them when they bounce into it. The most important thing, this is number 2, never get upset when someone bounces into your boundary. Ever. When someone bounces into it, either A, they don't know it, or B, they're just kind of going through the motions in their own life. Look, they're not thinking about your boundaries. This is really important. No one is thinking about your boundaries. And so when they bounce into it, don't get mad. It's a useless emotion to get angry when somebody does that, because remember, like, would you get mad at an oblivious child? Well, most adults are obliviously going through their day automatically. And when you're going through your life automatically without full adult vibrancy and presence, you're going to do some dumb stuff. So don't get mad. Just once it happens, again, turn back to explicit. Hey, I'd really like this. Could you pay attention to that? I would also say one reason you should never get mad is, do you know theirs? What are their boundaries? Do you know their boundaries that make them too vulnerable? Like if you go there, do you know their boundaries of what makes them upset? Have you asked the questions to try and figure out what they want, what they desire, what they need? Or are you just thinking about your own space? Now, I know, and I'm not trying to judge you because I don't know your story. I'm talking about, this happens for a lot of people. They make the mistake of wanting so much for people to respect them without understanding others or giving others respect. Because it's very easy to get selfish in relationships, especially if you've been hurt. I understand that. But sometimes when we've been hurt, we want to set up a boundary to make everybody fall in line with us without understanding them, and that's trouble. And that's why I want to lead to this next point, which is really important. Set boundaries that help your relationship, not just you. I mean, you have to think of the boundary is no longer you, and the boundary is no longer them. The boundary is the two of you together. So it's a different boundary. You need to open up your boundaries to the relationship. That means you need to change your personal preferences and pet peeves and everything else and open it to realize they got theirs too. Your boundaries as a couple should always be expanding between the two of you. Your trust should expand between the two of you. Your love should expand between the two of you. Your faith in each other and confidence in each other, that should expand between the two of you. Meaning boundaries are never set. In a relationship, you should be pushing them. Be more vulnerable on your 5th date than you were on your 1st date, than you were on your 1st year versus your 6th year. Like, continue to grow and open up that boundary. It's so important. But realize, if all the boundaries you have are to protect yourself, you're not setting boundaries for the relationship. You're just being a single person in a silo in a relationship. Real relationships have boundaries for themselves. What do I mean by that? You protect your time with your spouse, your lover, your partner, as much as you try to protect your time against them or against others. You protect the respect that the two of you have. When people try to poke holes at your lover and they criticize them, you don't allow that. You don't speak ill of the person that you're in love with. You know, if you're in love with them, that relationship is healthy. Look, if they're abusive or they're doing something bad, tell lots of people and get the heck out of that, get out of that situation. But if you are in love and this is a good relationship, listen. It's important that you respect the relationship boundaries, that you don't speak ill or bad of the other person, that you don't take pot shots at them, that you respect the two of you together as important as your preferences, as important as their preferences, as important as your career, as important as their career, that the relationship itself deserves protection and your boundary around it, to love on it and to protect it. Your job is to protect the relationship more than protecting your ego. Does that make sense? So expand your own definition of boundaries, and that will lead you in this last piece, which you actually really like, which is, how can you now let go of all these boundaries you've set up? Like, there's a freedom in relationship after a period of time where the boundaries have been knocked down more, where you're allowing people in more. I tell people all the time, I say, you really want to set boundaries in life? Be more loving. It'll push the boundaries away, right? You want to set more boundaries in life? Be more loving, because the bigger those boundaries get, the more they become useless. Like, why are you trying to protect yourself so much? Think about that. After a period of time in a relationship, why try to protect yourself so much? Open up again. Open up those boundaries. Now, again, if you're in a relationship where there's abuse, mental, physical, emotional abuse, then your job needs to be exit, period. Your job isn't change the other person. Your job, exit. Set the boundary, exit. That's the answer, period. If you're in an abusive relationship, go, right? Go get served. There's plenty of services in your local communities. Get support, ask for your friends, but get out of that relationship, because the abuse will not, they're not going to suddenly remember not to be abusive. That's where they're at, and you can't change it. So set that boundary clear and clean. But if you're in a positive relationship, love more in that relationship, be more vulnerable, let that thing come open. Now, obviously, you can tell I'm just answering your questions here and I'm going off the top of my head, but I hope it serves you, because the reality is most people, they're trying to protect themselves too much in life because they got hurt. But I had to learn that lesson too. I had a terrible breakup when I was a young man that caused me and led me into depression and ultimately suicidal thoughts. And I did what we all do. I didn't want to get hurt anymore. So I built up boundaries. I put up walls. I put on a mask. Whatever metaphor you want to use, I was trying to keep out the bad people, but at that cost of letting in good people. So I always say, sometimes in our own boundaries, in our own efforts to protect ourselves, we block out the very things that we so desperately desire. So it might actually turn out in your life, you didn't need more boundaries. You need to let a few of them go. Be vulnerable, be open to the universe, be open to your spouse, your lover, your partner again, and you'll feel a different kind of energy enter that relationship that you will sense is a big part of the charged life.
Resilience. If we've ever needed this conversation, it's probably right about now. People have really struggled to move through the dramatic changes we've all been experiencing, not just in the last year, But if you look at just the craziness of the last 5 years or the last 10 years, we've had technical disruptions, economic disruptions, pandemics. We've had, major political shifts around the world. Change is always accelerating. It's compounding each and every single year as the human body is being more connected to one another. It's an incredible challenge at the macro level to deal with all the changes that we face when sometimes it's scary, uncertain, discouraging, frustrating, when you witness hate, when you witness things that just don't vibe with your personal values or your socioeconomic beliefs or even your faith beliefs. All of that can really knock a person down. And resilience is that promise of the human spirit. The promise of the human spirit that it can rise through the most difficult times in life and recapture its sense of aliveness and connection and meaning and move forward with great faith and optimism. We know these things as we hear about resilience all the time. So today I'm hoping that I can provide a unique perspective on it from my vantage point. I think that a lot of resilience and our ability to do that is stymied or hampered or slowed down by the fact that we get hurt. We experience emotional pain, trauma, sadness, difficulty. And when we're in those days and nights where we feel that it's darkest, it's really hard to get up and go again. And it's not that most people lack mental strength or mental tenacity, which has become very popular in the last couple of years of like, oh, well, they're not mentally strong or resilient. It's like, oh, well, let's not forget the difficulties that people face in life. Because a big part of resilience is empathy. A big part of resilience is allowing ourselves to feel that. Allowing ourselves to feel those challenging days and those dark nights and those frustrating moments. Allowing ourselves to be like, oh yeah, it's all right if I'm not perfect. I'm struggling right now. Resilience always begins with acknowledgement of the difficulty, acknowledgement of the challenge, acknowledgement of the struggle of life, and acknowledgement of the inevitable hardships. Because picking yourself back up or remaining strong and optimistic through difficult times, that's super hard if we don't first and foremost allow ourselves to sense it, feel it, recognize it. And the issue is when people do sense and feel and recognize it, unconsciously or unconsciously, they often make a mistake. To become resilient, we have to remember, and you're going to write this down, we have to remember that hurt and pain are indicator lights, not the wheel. And let me draw out this metaphor for everybody today, and I'll go deeper on it because I've introduced this on social media in the past, and people are like, whoa, that's a huge concept. And this idea is that when we're young or we're lacking awareness, or we haven't done our personal development and we're just going through the motions of life, a lot of our unconscious behavior becomes steering ourselves and driving ourselves through or away from pain and hurt. We got hurt when we were teenagers, so we shut down. We felt pain of trauma, so we started doing everything to avoid that versus everything to live life. And so what I use this metaphor as hurt and pain are indicator lights, not the wheel. And that means imagine you're driving your car. And as you're driving your car, you notice that some of the indicators aren't where you thought they would be. You don't drive the car forever based on one of those lights. You ever have a light go out in your car? Like I had in my car, and I had this indicator light that the parking brake was on, but it wasn't. The light always said the parking brake is on. I mean, I had a 1988 Nissan Sentra, it had like 3 different colors on it because I had wrecked it before. There's Bondo colors on it. It was like orange and red. And this light was always on. Well, I didn't stop because that light was on. I knew that light was important, but I could verify whether or not that thing had to stop my forward momentum or change my destination. And what most people do is when they got hurt or they feel pain, they start gripping the wheel of life and steering only to avoid pain. It's kind of like if you're driving down a road and you steer only to avoid the potholes, you will definitely run off that road. There will be a greater accident, because what's more important in driving is that you have a vision of where you're going, and that the wheel, you, the person at the wheel, you are directing this vehicle of life where you want it to go, not just where you are afraid it might go, and not just away from pain, but rather towards your ultimate vision. And sometimes we lack resilience in life. We are not even conscious of it, because all we're actually doing is never recovering from those indicator lights, and we're driving by the indicator lights. You know, another example I gave this morning, I think on social media, was about, you know, imagine you're a pilot of a plane and you're flying that plane to New York. And you know what? The indicator lights, they show problems. Well, you work to solve the problem of the indicator light, but just because it's windy or you're getting a lot of turbulence, it doesn't mean that when you're going to New York and you get this turbulence, you go, oh my gosh, this is just terrible, I better go where the turbulence isn't, and you end up in Philadelphia. No, you're going to New York. And that having vision for life, having a direction in mind, and being at firm control of the wheel is a important precept to everything we're going to talk about today in resilience and mindset. Meaning, if pain has a hold of that wheel, you're not going to be where you want to be in life. Consciousness, intention, awareness, mindfulness, spirit, soul, future, purpose, mission, whatever you call it, that's got to be at the wheel. When you got hurt and you were 15, that didn't need to dictate your next decade. You didn't need to drive your next decade of your life because of the hurt. You got divorced at 40. You don't need to be at 50 having just been reacting to that indicator light for a whole decade. What you got to go is, oh, okay, this thing happened. It hurt. I had to check in on myself. I had to make sure that I was okay. I had to take care of that problem or take care of myself, but that's not going to direct my map. That's not going to direct where I go. That's not going to make me steal. It's not going to steal my ability to steer my life. And a realization of resilience comes when often we realize, wow, I did pick myself up, but I went in the wrong direction. See, a lot of people actually have tremendous resilience and they never get credit for it. But it was the choices they made next that showed they didn't have ultimate resilience. Because you know what we learn in high performance habits? And I know you all know this. That first habit of highest performing people in the world, which remember, they were also the highest in well-being and positive relationships, was clarity. They had clarity about who they were, where they wanted to go. They had clarity about who they were and where they wanted to go. Think about that for a minute. They had clarity about who they were and where they wanted to go. It's a pretty powerful idea, right? That if I get hurt, or I feel pain, or I feel sadness, and I shut myself down, but I'm able to pick up and go through the week still, yeah, I picked myself up. But if I didn't ask, wait, okay, that wasn't what I expected. That did hurt. But what's it about now? Where do I want to go now? What is my vision? Without that, I'm here to tell you, it's extremely hard to be truly resilient. There's a difference between picking yourself up and getting back at the day and being resilient enough to course correct for what's true to you, to where you want to go. So to be resilient, we have to know in the future, you know what, next time I get discouraged, someone judges me, I get hurt, I'm sad. Next time I experience that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to remember that's an indicator light to check in with myself. That's an indicator light to check in, see what's meaningful, see what matters to me, and where I'm going to go now. What's the next right action of integrity for me now? What does my future hold for me now? Not to now grip the wheel and stay or live in the pain or the hurt or direct ourselves only from the pain and the hurt. Because what resilience is the ability no longer to direct ourselves from the discouragement, the hurt, or the pain. Now, I know this is kind of like an advanced idea in personal development here, and some people will always say, well, yeah, easy for you to say you didn't have this person break your heart, or you didn't have that happen at your job, or you didn't have this happen, in your business. I'm like, well, I probably did, or work with somebody who did. And if I didn't, the good news is 7 billion people on the planet, somebody did. If you keep thinking your hurt and pain is only yours, it only happens to you, then you feel even more isolated and less likely to enter the world again faithfully and confidently. And so don't be one of those people who are like, you don't understand my hurt and pain, because that's a slippery slope into isolationism. That's a slippery slope into withdrawing from the world. It's a slippery slope of closing off your heart when you think other people can't understand. Maybe the immediate people around you who hurt you, they don't understand. But the world at large, they get it. They've been through it. They saw their parent go through it. They saw somebody experience it. And when we can recognize the common human story that's always struggle or progress, we can go, oh, other people struggle too, but they can progress too. And so can you. How are we going to set our emotional tone in this chaos? How are we going to find our strength, our center, and project goodness and compassion at a time when it is desperately needed? How are we going to hold the line in our businesses so that we don't overreact and going one direction when we ought to be in another? How do we manage all of this today? Is my joy to talk with you about. Number one is the decision that I will always be the one to remain centered amid the chaos. And I have worked on myself, and I have taught myself that for pretty much 25 years. I've worked on that at a very steady pace. When everyone's freaking out, I take a bunch of deep breaths. I connect with my breath. I make sure that I'm keeping perspective. But ultimately, that decision I will be centered amid this means for me that I will choose the emotional tone and my attitude as I am dealing with uncertainty or chaos. I remember years ago, I was doing an event and a person in the back of the room had a seizure. And literally they fell out of their chair, and on the ground they started having a full physical reaction to the seizure as well, where they were shaking, and it was terrifying for the people around them. And I was kind of at the beginning of my career, and I saw it happen. It was almost in slow motion. And could you imagine, you're on your stage? I mean, put yourself there. You're in front of, hundreds or thousands of people, and all of a sudden somebody is, falling over and having a full seizure in front of the whole audience. The whole audience literally starts looking back. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. People are standing up. Oh my God, oh my God. Total panic sets in the room. And I remember standing up there, and I have this on video where at first, my first reaction is like this, kind of like shocked, just like everybody else, like, whoa. And then I kind of look over, and instantaneously in my mind, I go, Brendon, you have to be in charge here. I didn't want to be in charge. I had to be in charge. And my mind immediately said, two choices here. Join the panic, or stay stable and strong and present and connected with what's really happening. And so that decision, I'm going to say centered amid this, made me immediately also decide I need to center the audience. So I asked the entire audience, I just announced, I said, everyone sit down. And everyone just kind of looked, I said, sit down. And everybody, they sit down. And I said, please sit down, because your panic and your chaos right now is not serving the energy of this person who needs healing. Sit down. Be quiet. Everyone, please close your eyes so my team can address this situation. Please close your eyes and let's put some positive energy and prayer in the room for this person who needs our attention right now. They don't need negativity and fear in the room. Let's put some love and prayer. Let's send some energy. So please close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and remember, you can choose to contribute good energy to the situation. And so I had everyone close and their eyes, take a few deep breaths, and meditate or send prayer back to this person as my team was clearing that row and getting to this person so that when the paramedics would arrive, that person could be removed. Now, here's the deal. I knew I had like 20 minutes, at least before we could get a paramedic probably at that spot in the seminar. And I thought, how am I gonna buy 20 minutes? People are gonna start freaking out. And I realized, no, if I set the emotional tenor in this room on purpose, and if I ask of others to find the best within themselves, if I ask of others to take a breath, if I ask of others to be responsible for the energy they are projecting into this space, if I ask of that, and if I demonstrate that, we'll make it through this moment. And that might not seem like a big deal, but I really believe the energy in that room either was serving this man as he was having a seizure or was making it worse. You know, imagine here he is having this unbelievable, stressful, life-threatening situation, and if all around him everybody is screaming in chaos, the body feels that, you know? The body and the mind feels the energy of what is around it. And so if that is true, let us all be responsible for the energy we are projecting right now. I've seen friends hop online and something's happening, and what are they doing? They're contributing to the chaos. They're posting snarky comments. There's sarcasm, blame, vitriol, anger. And I'm not here to say that we can't use our social mediums to contribute to an argument or to make a case, but every word has a tone to it. And the tone that we are setting in reply to chaos either furthers the chaos or it levels it. And the more of us who choose to be even, tempered, thoughtful, caring, compassionate, you know, the values that we would all hope to have as a global citizenry, the more that we will judiciously take action in a thoughtful way. That's the hope. And whether you believe that or not, I hope that you'll hear this first practice. Your family needs to see you centered, calm, strong, and assured in chaos. Otherwise, we are passing down panic to another generation. It's sad, in my view, that we have a world that is so connected, so potentially capable, so well informed, and yet we still have people who overreact. Now, I'm not saying that overreaction isn't something you would anticipate, but there's a difference between overreaction as in taking action to overprotect, like doing something useful to shore up things, versus an emotional overreaction of fear. You can deal with really difficult situations without the negative range of blame, vitriol, hate, and anger. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm just here today to touch base with you. You can set that emotional tenor. Let's all do a better job at that. Let me give you a couple examples of how I'm doing it right now. To stay centered amid chaos, you also have to stay a little distanced from chaos, even as it is happening. I'll give you an example of how I'm doing it. And many of you guys know I have 4 major companies that I'm either the principal in or one of the principal investors in. And for me, like lots of different teams around the world, and obviously you've seen here, we have a global community. Well, for me, because I'm constantly being hit up on this phone by people from literally around the world, and people count on me to advise their companies. So what do? I don't engage the chaos all day. Instead, I work my plan. And many of you already know how I do that with my morning routines. My morning routine doesn't change, still stays steady. Wake up, center my mind, plan my day, open up my body. But I also do simple things right now. Right now, listen, I'm not checking in my phone every 10 minutes because guess what you want to do in chaos? Refresh, 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 refresh. But every time you hit refresh and every time you scroll, don't forget it takes emotional and mental energy. And if refresh, 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 chaos, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Just think about that for a minute. You're hitting the oh my God button all day when you're refreshing in chaotic news times. And that is creating the panic and the stress inside that is freaking you out. So as an example of simple things that I do, I only check in on the news twice a day. I would say news at noon, right? I'm gonna get through my morning. I'm gonna make the magic happen. I'm gonna move my projects forward in the mornings. If it's news that I need to know about that affects me dramatically and locally, trust me, I'll hear about it. My friends or my wife or somebody will let me know via text. But I don't check in on the news because nothing's gonna change for me in dealing with the news until around noon. And I know people say, well, what if this is canceled or that's canceled? You'll hear it from your family. You'll get the news, but I don't check into the major media. I don't check into social media multiple times a day. I don't check into, and I'm talking about what people are doing right now. They're hitting refresh by the minute, by the 5 minutes, by the 10. How many of you are guilty about this? How many of you have been addicted to refreshing in the last 72 hours, right? It's easy to do that when there's chaos, but that's also the most important time not to do that for your own psyche, right? That's the most important time to separate yourself from chaos versus what do? Reconnect to it every 30 seconds? Think about what that does. You cannot, doesn't matter how conscious or intelligent or brilliant or meditative you are, if you check into, oh my God, bad news 24/7, there is no human that does not start to shape your emotional reality. No human alive. The Dalai Lama couldn't do it without feeling that emotion if that's what he did 24/7. And right now, that's what we have people doing. And so I think what is necessary is to stay absolutely informed, but realize not a whole lot is going to shift in periods of time throughout the day. Now, I know it depends on what you do and how you respond in your career and where your family is and all these things. No question. No question. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. To stay centered in the mid of the chaos, you choose how much you check in. You choose. And then at a conscious level, I'd say, back it up a little bit. So however, you're like, I gotta check 20 times this hour, but I'm like, okay, I appreciate that feeling and that concern. So let's just back. Could we check in just 5 times in the hour so you can actually get something done? So please don't think I'm saying don't be involved or don't be informed. I'm saying don't let the chaos eat you alive, because listen to this statement. Chaos inside grows as checking in on the outside grows. Right? The more everyone's freaking out and the more you listen to all of it, the more it infects you. Because there is also another contagion going on right now. And if you've studied neuroscience with me for a while, or you've been with me in this community for a while, you know how much we talk about emotional contagion. Energy spreads. It's like, listen, we can act without losing our center. We can act without spreading fear. We can act without the anxiety. Like the stuff that I have to take on a daily basis, if you saw it, you'd be like, oh my gosh. But I choose not to address it with anxiety. I choose to be in center of my emotional reality, the chooser, the captain of the ship. And I just want you to be that observer of how you've been dealing with this and choose to stay centered amid the chaos. I do things like keep your morning routine. It is so important right now. That is stability in an unstable world. Don't overly engage what is happening. Don't contribute to the negative energy in any way, even if you want to. Trust me, when I do check in, I want to say, you idiots, oh my gosh, what's happening over here? Don't be that person. It's not going to help your spirit or your soul, I promise you. Be the person who's centered amid the chaos. I'm really excited to talk about this month's topic, which is how do you create remarkable and long-lasting friendships. And I'm talking about the kind of friendships that you love, the friendships that bring you alive, that bring you that connection, that help life feel more even meaningful, that help you progress and feel supported, help you be seen, help you feel a true connection with not just others, but with humanity, because the people around you are awesome. And when the people around you are awesome, you know you feel better about life. But we also went through this crazy last 18 months where so many people were isolated, where we had so much turmoil, so much conflict, so much in just uncertainty and fear in the world, where I really believe friendships really elevated, and you could see whether or not you had great friends throughout this pandemic or you didn't. You were able to see whether or not you got the support that you needed, whether or not you were able to maintain your sense of vibrancy in some of those times of aloneness, whether or not you had people who cheered you on when you decided to make a transition, start something new, or the kids left the house, or you got sick, or something was going on that was difficult in your life. We look to our friends. And I think that this is a very undervalued conversation in mental health. So much about the mental health conversation is appropriately about self-awareness, it's about mindfulness, it's about taking care of our stressors, and a lot of it is that solo work that we all have to do for self-mastery. But I can tell you that the great universities of the world, the psychology department is right near the sociology department because they go together. Like, we are social beings. And when you lose that social connection with the world, which usually starts through lack of disciplined habits with your friends, then suddenly life loses its color. And I think this is so important. You're going to hear me talk about friendship today in a way you probably haven't heard before, very much from what we would call a high-performance psychology perspective. And I think you're going to love this. So if you've been struggling with friendships in your lifetime, not either having enough friends or not having the quality of friends that you've always wanted, this is a serious conversation today. I can't imagine a time, at least in my life so far, where friendships were so incredibly important. I get to share some of the things that really have worked, not just in my life and my friendships, but in studying this work deeply over the years, in recognizing how many people are entrepreneurs, high achievers, people who are trying to make great impact in the world. You're here today, and sometimes that journey can feel very lonely, or when you get to the top, it can feel lonely, they say, and I'm like, I kind of believe what my friend Brian Tracy and mentor said to me one time. He said, if it's lonely at the top, you did it wrong. I thought, woo, that's good. That's good, because maybe sometimes we value today progress. We value today getting things done. We value that top mountain of achievement. And then we look around and go, oh, nobody really knows me. I don't feel a connection to others. Yeah, I got the thing, the house, the car, the bank account, the accolades, the Instagram page, and all of a sudden, though, something's missing. And friendship is one of the greatest vehicles to the real psychology of well-being that we talk about here at GrowthDay. And I'm going to share with you a secret today, just a simple phrase. You're going to go, oh my gosh, that's why my friendships aren't going right. So you're going to love this session. I say that triangle, right, of well-being that we talk about GrowthDay. Aliveness is one of the things we all want after we had everything else, right? Another thing we want is connection. We're not after casual friendships here today. We're at like, how do I create authentic, deep, trusting, vulnerable, fun, real relationships? Because how many of you have ever had friendships that turned out to be fake? You thought you had a good friendship, and that thing turned out to be not so good, or poisonous, or somebody they weren't loyal to you as a friend, or they lied to you, or something went wrong. You thought, what? How could that happen in that relationship? And I always tell, friendships are a science of relationship. right? It's about how you create relationship with others. And I'm going to give you, again, a phrase that will really help you with this today. And then if it's true that we want aliveness and connection, this triangle, another thing that we want is meaning. Well, meaning isn't achieved just by living your purpose each day in your own head. Meaning is achieved through a social relationship network. My sense of meaning is, do I feel connected to the world? And the world isn't an abstract thing. It's not like I feel connected to the oak tree. It's like, no, I mean, did you make your difference in the world? That's going to be served and answered through your social impact, your relationships with others. And I have to tell you, I've been coaching people for 20 years of my life now, and a lot of people have one friend. You know, in the United States, unfortunately, the number of people with 3 good friends has declined over the decades. You're like, 3 good friends? Oh, we got to talk about that, because some people stumble into friendships or hope for friendships. Just like some people hope to have a loving relationship. Just like some people hope to have a good job. Just like some people hope that, they get healthier. And then there's strivers who take life a little bit by the reins and say, no, let me architect that, let me build that. And I'll give you my own examples today of where I sucked at friendships. And I had to learn, how do you do them? And how do you create them? And once you know how to create and craft them, life really opens up for you. And it becomes not just more alive and connected, but more meaningful. Like a sense of meaning happens when we have a tapestry of social relationships that are real and impactful. And then, of course, in the middle of that triangle, you always see me draw out growth. That your friends should be lifting you up, not pushing you down. Your friends should be inspiring you to get better. Your friends should have your back, but also be willing to challenge your face. You know what I'm saying? Like your friends are and should be one of your primary growth drivers in life. Most people choose ambitious goals to be their growth driver. Oh, I'm gonna do something that's hard, or I'm gonna try to achieve this amazing thing. I'm gonna try to become a millionaire or make this difference or build this company or have this type of family. And it's this external climb, this thing they're trying to achieve. And too many people forget, it's like, actually, one of the best drivers of growth isn't your job, isn't your goals, it's your friendship circle. And when your friendship circles make you a more alive, deeper, caring, thoughtful, authentic person in the world, I'm telling you what, guess what? At work, you're better. At home, you're better. Your art gets better. Your sense of life lifts. Let me share with you what I really believe to be the 2 central problems of friendship. Okay, the 2 central problems of friendship. The first one is a failure of each of our own. Like, I'm just taking this on myself as well. It's like we fail in life to realize most of our friendships were assigned, not aligned. Most of our friendships were assigned, not aligned. What I mean by that is many of our friendships happen because group assignment, right? Think about it. Some of your best friends, where'd you meet them? School? Your neighborhood? Some other affiliation, maybe at work? Maybe in a group that you joined? So it was like, oh, we showed up somewhere or we were assigned somewhere and there was that girl who sat next to me in class. We became friends. Or, oh, I worked with this person at work. And we were coworkers. We became friends. And these are kind of like assigned friends. And I know that sounds really weird to say, so bear with me a little bit. I don't mean that the manager like, you're gonna be friends here. What I mean is, because of your group, your affiliation, or where you were, you kind of met people there, and by default, by you being a good person or communicating or doing stuff with them, you kind of became friends. Versus, that's like an assigned friend. It's like, oh, because we were here, we became friends. Versus an aligned friend, which is, oh, I'm an adult now. What are the types of friends that I want to create that align with my passion, my dreams, my lifestyle, my values, my beliefs, the things that I want of life, and let me go get them, not let them fall into my lap. Which brings up the second designation. And this is hard to say to people, and if you're in a place where you feel lonely in your life, or you feel like you don't have great friendships, I promise this will be so helpful for you today to even know how your own brain thinks. And many of us, and I was this way probably all the way throughout high school even, I never, and this is the second problem of friendships, I never made the deliberate choice to have remarkable friendships. I kind of ended up with friends. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Who's like ended up with friends? If you kind of just like ended up with like this person, it was kind of, my friend, one of my buddies he goes, I don't want no rando friends. And it was like random. Now, I love random. I love the universe. I love God. I love coincidence. Listen, I read the Celestine prophecy. People are glowing out there for me. I believe in that coincidence stuff. But I can also share with you, like, if you just allow randomness in your life all the time, you'll always feel a sense of mediocrity too. We have to stretch. We have to choose our life. And to choose our life, we have to be deliberate and go, what kind of life do I want? I would like you to learn to architect your ideal friendships. And can you get all of them, and will all your friendships be perfect? I'm not that guy. I'm not here to promise everything's gonna be sweet and perfect and peaches in life. I am here to suggest, though, that if you haven't deliberately chosen the types of friendships that you want, that's a problem, especially if you're an adult, right? And that's the thing is, we're not encouraged to do that. Think about how much time people were feeding your ears with the idea you had to be really thoughtful about the career you choose. How many of you ever had more people tell you more times about be so thoughtful about the school you choose, the career you choose, but no one ever said as much, be very thoughtful about the friends and the friendships that you build. And that's why we have a lot of high-achieving people who are lonely their whole life. Well, think about your career. What are you going to be one day? Very rarely, what's the type of social network you're going to build around you? What's the type of friendships you're going to architect? What are you going to be proud of in terms of your friends in the future? What do you want your friends to achieve? What do you want your friends to experience in life? Not just what they give you, but what are you going to give out too? What kind of friendship do you want to create and experience? How do you want your friends to actually interact with one another? Have you ever thought about that? We spend so much time, if you're a parent and you have 2 kids, you're so worried about how they interact, right? I know people who've never even thought, how do I want my friends to interact? I mean, they might think, you know what, we shouldn't put them in a room at a party because they have this history, that background, but very few people are like, I'm going to actually teach my friends how to be friends with one another. Now, I know some of you might be like, this guy sounds like a control freak. I'm like, I am, but I'm a happy one. You know what I'm saying? I think this is such an important area to architect. Most friends have never talked about how to be friends. They just go, you want to go to lunch? They go to lunch. They talk about the weather, the waiter, the food, what's going on. They leave. And there's no architecting. There's no, I think of like, social systems are things that can be shaped. You all think like at work, right? How much we talk about at work, building a culture. More books and more people have spent time on this conversation of building culture at work and never the culture of a friendship. Isn't that weird? I don't know where along the line we lost the conversation and the desire to choose to build awesome friendships and a culture of friendship. Meaning not just friends, most people think of, I want a friend, right? When you're in high school, you just want a friend, right? You just like, at least I was like, can I get one? You know, it's like, you worry about having friendships when you grow up. And usually that means you think, and we're all trained this way, especially in Western cultures. We're taught to have a friend, and we think in a very individualistic mode. I and this person are in relationship, and then you have another friend. I and this person are in relationship. And maybe you go out and you try to get them together, and we have a party. But even at the party, it's individual nodes, me, that friend, and this friend. And I don't get trained as I'm getting older to think as a systems social architect. Oh, wow, look at all these nodes, if you will, these friends. If I like each of these people and I have a relationship with each of these people, why don't, in some way, I weave them together and create a tapestry of friendship where I'm actually connecting the dots and creating a culture of friendship? See, we don't think like that, do we? I was a very kind of solitary child. I was kind of in my own little world. I don't know about you all, but I was definitely, I would be like an introverted kind of child. I kind of kept to myself. I like to play with my toys kind of by myself. In elementary school, from what I can remember, I was kind of solo, Brendon. I didn't see social systems, right? I was in a class with kids and a teacher, and I had a relationship with the teacher, and I had a relationship with this person or that person or not, but I couldn't see the class. I couldn't say, oh, like this group is kind of like this. Instead, it was just like, she likes me or she doesn't. Teachers like that. I didn't see the system. Today, I'd like you to try to see the system a little bit. See the system of the friendships you've built in your life. See the system at play at work. See the system of your culture or your nonprofit or your company. When you can start seeing a bigger picture and get out of your head a little bit, now something happens. There's connection, there's community. See, everyone says, I want community. I'm like, well, you can't be an individualistic person in the community forever. You have to elevate to seeing the system. If you'll never be a community member or an effective one or a helpful one if you can't get out of your head. Well, I'm saying that not as judgment to you, that was me. So there's no judgment here. If you don't have friends, I'm telling you that my story too. I was a solo person. I was in my own head. I couldn't see the class. I couldn't see the system. And so I felt apart. And because I felt apart and I couldn't see what was happening and I didn't know how to engage, I was lonely. And then when I finally made a connection with a friend, that friend became my life. Later on, that perpetuated into, some of you guys know my story of my first breakup with my high school sweetheart. I was destroyed because that was my one person, right? That was my one node in the world. And then when that relationship fell apart, I fell apart and became depressed and suicidal. And so how we relate with one or multiple people can completely shape our mental health. I know you already know that. And so I had to learn, wow, one, I don't want to ever be dependent on one friend. I want to build a support system. You ever heard that language before? No one says, go build a supporter. I want you to listen to the language of successful people. When successful people are speaking, they never tell you, go build a supporter. They say, go build what? A support system, a support network. Oh, I got to get out of single node thinking. A node is one individual unit, and I got to get into the system. I got to stop thinking, does Sally at the class next, does she like me? And if she likes me, my whole life is good or bad or ruined. And I got to go, there's a class here. There's an energy, a vibe, a spirit. There's rules and norms. There's a culture here that is happening. How do I want to participate in this? And how do I want this culture to happen too in ways that I can affect? What do they want? And we all have to start thinking about that more in a society in which we're supposedly connected, but we've actually become individual nodes in the network. In Tuscany right now and answering you guys' questions as always, but this one was a really good one and perfect for our setting, which was, Brendon, how do you find inspiration? Well, obviously, Tuscany is helping right now. Denise and I are on vacation, part of our summer vacation, and stopping over here, and it's just stunningly gorgeous. But it's a really good topic because, you know, you guys see it all the time, all the content I produce, the podcasts, the 6 different books, the 20 plus online courses. Like, how do you do all that? Well, you have to learn to set up your life for inspiration. Inspiration is not something that hopefully will happen one day and you come up with the greatest idea of your life. You have to consistently put things into your life to generate that level of creativity and inspiration that happens on an ongoing basis, that gives you ongoing breakthroughs. And that's the way I think about it. On this trip, let me share 4 things that we're really thinking about to get inspired. All right, number 1 thing that I think of with inspiration is adventure. Because what we often think about is, I'll just be inspired by, picking up social media and I'll scroll through things and that will help me become more inspired. I'm like, no, that will help you become distracted or become someone who mimics other people. Instead, I think one way to really get inspiration in your life is to break your pattern of routine and do something that is adventurous. So Denise and I, this morning, we went on a big hot air balloon ride, which was spectacular. Yesterday we did something more simple. We took a long bike ride, but kind of adventurous, I would say, here in Tuscany. But we're always trying to figure out what's something that we can do physically to activate our brain, our body, our breath, our movement, because from that it opens up your brain, opens up new ideas and thoughts. So 1, begin with some type of adventure. Have you scheduled any adventurous things in your life over the next 6-7 months? And if you haven't, then you can't be surprised that you're not having better breakthroughs. Number 2, I would say, to draw inspiration, revisit and learn about history. These places that we're seeing in Tuscany are, 700 years old, 1,000 years old, which is pretty epic, right? And if you think about that, a big piece of learning of life is visiting history. When we were in Florence, we checked out all this amazing locations that, from where Michelangelo and Leonardo and some of the great artists and really standard bearers of culture emerged from, and we learned so much. I just felt like we were constantly learning on that and seeing all this artistry from history. Art history especially is really inspiring to me, and I got all these new ideas of things that I want to create or do based off of that. So I think studying history, I've just also finished another book of the week, and I studied 4 US presidents and how they handled conflict and challenge in really times of crisis. And learning from history has always been something that inspired me to want to be a better artist, but also a better creator and a better leader. There goes Denise. She doesn't know I'm filming, but she's a really huge inspiration for me because she loves all things art and culture, and she's always getting me to work out and take care of myself. And it's kind of like watching a wild animal right now. I feel like I'm a guy on one of those Discovery Channel things, but that girl right there has been one of the great inspirations of my life. I love you, honey. Look at that. Yes. The grapes. Number 3 is people. People should inspire you. And I'm thinking about that because we're in the vineyard right now, and I was thinking how yesterday, was it? Yeah, we did this cooking class, right, with this amazing chef who was so passionate and enthusiastic about Italian cooking. And I'm somebody, as you know, I don't know much about cooking. I think it was my first Italian cooking class. It was amazing. I know nothing about that. It was so inspiring. Afterwards, I said to my wife, I was like, you know what? I loved that. I loved learning from this guy and hearing about him. He was funny, he was a great chef. And even though I'm not a cook, I was inspired to cook. And I think about how critical it is to be around new people with different skill sets than you that help you access different areas of inspiration for yourself. I mean, not just in terms of cooking. It just the way he was teaching made me think about how I teach. The way he prepared things made me think about excellence in preparing things in my own life. And I just think it's so huge for you to get around people who are great and passionate at what they do as much as you possibly can, because you're going to find inspiration there. I know that sounds so basic, but think about how often you hang out with the same 4 or 5 people. You know, you see your family members, you hang out with a couple people, and the unfortunate reality is many people live in a tiny little bubble. And because they live in a tiny little bubble, their thoughts are a tiny little thought bubble. And they're never really breaking the boundaries of their own thinking. They're never accessing higher levels of reasoning because they have no perspective. So get around more people, hang out more with new people who have great skill sets where you can be inspired by both their mastery, their enthusiasm, and their own field of interest. Will you look at this field? Is that gorgeous? I don't know if you guys can see this. It's too bright. Last big idea for you, for inspiration, is journaling. It doesn't sound as sexy as adventure or history and art or hang out with amazing people. But the truth is, you need to give yourself some time to hang out with yourself and actually think about what you want in life. Because isn't it true? You often go on vacation, you see amazing places, and you're like, oh, I'm inspired. Or you sit by the pool, or you sit out, somewhere just having a picnic, or maybe you're at the coffee shop with your journal, and you just write about life. And I've got my hat on here, Live, Love, Matter. And I think, of how that simple sort of lessons from my car accident, whatever it was, 23 years ago, inspired this whole life that I have. Because after my accident, I sat down, I journaled what I wanted to learn from that experience of my car accident. I wanted to learn to live, I wanted to learn to love more, I wanted to learn to make a difference. And that really came from journaling and just writing about what do you want life to be about? What do you want life to be about? The more consistently you journal and you write, what do you want life to be about? I promise you, my friend, I promise you, you will start feeling more inspired way more often. But you got to do the work. All these things. Planning adventure, you got to do that work. Learning about art and learning about history, got to do the work. I mean, getting yourself around people who are inspiring, enthusiastic, you got to travel those events, do those things, and finally journal every single day about what you really want of life, what your thoughts are, what your feelings and needs and desires and observations are about life, because the more you write and observe about life, the more you are inspired. In Tuscany this morning, and going on our first ever balloon ride, which we're excited about. Still waking up, honestly, but I've heard this is amazing and people talk about it all the time. One thing you have to do when you're traveling is you've got to go on local adventures. Sometimes that means, like today, we go on a balloon ride. Sometimes that means, we go on a bike ride. Sometimes that means we take helicopter tours, wine tastings, go to the best restaurants, have some chef things, or just go to local park and have a picnic. It doesn't have to be fancy, but the whole point of traveling is to get out and about and enjoy life a little bit. So, this cute girl and me, that's gonna be our balloon. And there's the morning sunrise coming up in Tuscany. Sunrise on this side. And the sunshine of all sunshines right here. Wasn't that smooth? Mm-hmm. It just came down so smooth, and then, I think he landed like right over there, kind of touched the ground really softly, touched it again, and then put a little more air in it and bounced it right onto the back of his trailer in like one smooth dance move. And now they're letting the air out. And that's our balloon adventure. This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, That was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.